This here is a Corsair 3200, a case that I thought looked pretty interesting. So I asked Corsair to send one over for a Tron-themed gaming PC. Now if you hear some weird sounds in the background, that's my 3D printer. It's a brand new Bamboo Lab P2S with an AMS2 attached. We're gonna be 3D printing some pretty cool stuff to truly set this build apart. We're also gonna be playing this angle's worse than I thought. I thought I'd be a bit taller than this box. We're gonna be setting the mood quite a bit in this one with lighting. So we're gonna be playing around with different lighting schemes. We've got some QX fans from Corsair here. We've got some RGB strips as well as some custom printed 3D brackets to sort of give an ambiance, a mood. We're gonna set the tone with lighting in this one, and we're gonna make sure that what goes on inside this case really does feel like a Tron movie. My favorite of the three is Tron Legacy. If you haven't seen it, you should totally check it out. I absolutely love the theming, I love the story, and I especially love the lighting. It isn't just a typical good guys in blue, bad guys in red that we're after here. I want to set a proper mood. The entire setting of this movie, at least by the time that Flynn makes his way into the game, is somber. It's almost gloomy, but in a digital sense, and sort of like a futuristic dystopian sense. And so pulling that off, getting that just right in this kind of chassis is going to be a bit of a challenge, but I think it will pay off. Our blank canvas awaits. This 3200 is actually the smoke variant as well, which means it has a slightly transparent front panel. There's a lot of stuff we can do here. And then of course, just a mid-tower in general. This isn't the RGB variant, so it doesn't come with RGB fans. That's why we have the QX series fans. And plenty of space, I think, for extra amenities, things to really, again, set the tone and the theme. Let me just remove this one Phillips screw. I'll show you what's happening inside. Ooh, back connect motherboard support is going to come in super handy here to help us keep our cable exposure to a minimum. We want a very clean look in here. An angled fan platform for dedicated graphics card cooling. That's interesting. But yeah, otherwise, what you'd come to expect from most modern mid-towers at this point, and that's not a bad thing. And speaking of graphics cards, we're going with an RTX 4090 BTF edition from Asus. Now, I've used this once before, but not to any specific theme. The fact that this has both red and blue accents is pretty cool already, but it also has some transparent elements for some customizable LEDs to, again, help set that mood. Now, I should clarify, there is no objective with this build other than to strictly theme it around Tron. I'm not worried about value, I'm not worried about performance, even though we're using a very high-end card here in 2026. It's obviously not the most modern, and you'll see the platform that we're using is far from being modern, but that's okay. It would still be a pretty awesome system if you were to build it today for the right price, but in this video, we're more concerned with the way it all looks. Yes, I know, a Core i9-14900 is a bit on the older side, but it will allow us to use our BTF motherboard, that being an ROG Maximus Z790 Hero BTF. And that part's important because it allows us to keep all of our cable connections concealed. I bought a super cool, immersive, sort of like panoramic AIO for this build from Trikes. I think it's gonna look super cool when it's installed. Of course, we need DDR5 for this one. We have a 2TB NVMe SSD and a 1000X power supply from Corsair to wrap it all up. This is a lot. I'm running out of space here. I think it's gonna be worth the wait. I hope you will stay with me.
Are you sitting on a gaming PC without an activated copy of Windows? Forget $100+ retail keys, instead snag an OEM Windows 11 key for a fraction of the price to unlock the full potential of the OS. Oh, and don't worry, they'll still remove those pesky activation watermarks. Just click the links below to get started today, and be sure to use our special offer code SKGS for a sweet discount on a variety of options including Windows 11 Pro, Home, and more.
I know this seems like a weird place to start, but I want something snagging. Oh, of course, okay. All of the front panel stuff is hardwired to the front panel. So we're gonna carefully slide that. We'll just sit it like that. I think that'll hold for now. We're gonna go ahead and remove the original fans in this chassis, which again are not RGB capable. That's because of this variant of the 3200 we went with. I wanted some pretty premium QX 120s that we could daisy chain together to keep our cable management at a minimum as well. These things connect to each other without cables, which is awesome. Again, that's going to keep things clean. They are just a bit on the expensive side though, and that's been one of my complaints with Corsair products recently, is a lot of their premium fans and things are just astronomically expensive. So we're just gonna pull these out one by one, and check that out. Wow, installation's gonna be so much easier. And that pretty much takes care of the front. We're gonna preserve the top for our Trikes 360mm AIO. I think it's gonna fit up here. It's gonna be tight, but I think we can pull it off. We're gonna swap those stock fans out for more QX 120s, so all the fans in here are gonna be exactly the same.
And while that was being tackled, my 3D printer was whirring away. I tried several variations of light cycles I found on Bamboo Studio's online model section and had a bit of fun experimenting.
Ooh la la, this is looking good so far.
But as with any project of this scope, when you're working from scratch, there's a lot of trial and error. I was working with a new kind of transparent PLA filament as well, which required a bit of honing before each print, and since each STL file took several hours to shell out, I constantly switched between 3D modeling some parts of my own in Tinkercad and assembling other aspects of the PC itself, starting first with the platform. I absolutely love this BTF motherboard. Almost every connection is flipped around to the back side, meaning we can keep cables completely concealed for an ultra clean look. With the Intel Core i9-14900 carefully dropped into place, the retention arm can be lowered and locked. 32 gigs of Corsair Dominator Platinum DDR5 is up next, and you'll see why I went with only 2 DIMMs a bit later in the video. Then came our storage drive, which settled underneath a large metal slab included with the board. By this point, all that was left platform side was AIO mounting gear, which for this trike stage model involved a backplate and 4 standoffs, pretty typical for most modern Intel stuff. The board and all its fixings was gently lowered into position within the 3200D, where it could then be tightened down with 8 Phillips screws. I like to cable manage front I/O right away to prevent future rat's nest, and I definitely don't want a build of this caliber looking ratty behind the motherboard tray, even if most of it will go unseen. Here, zip ties and Velcro straps are your best friends. My first round of 3D printed light cycles turned out better than I expected, to be fair, requiring a bit of post-print assembly, as well as our large Tron logo. Now you'll notice I mixed in quite a bit of transparent PLA filament, and that's because I'm hoping it plays nicely with all of our lighting. Much of our theme will rely on it, so why not feed into it with some of our prints? Cash seems to approve.
This stuff is turning out awesome so far. I think we won't really know until it's all thrown together. Still have to do some cleaning up. Of course, I'm gonna take, I have a small Dremel that I use specifically for cleaning up my filaments, my prints, and we're gonna try to smooth a lot of this stuff out, especially the light bike. That one has a lot of rough grooves. You can see the texture from when the filament was laid. So I'm gonna try to smooth that one up especially. But in the meantime, while stuff is still printing, because more is on the way, I wanna get the rest of the important hardware in here so that we can then work around it and begin adding the smaller printed pieces to finish it off. First, just gonna replace these height fans with Corsair ones. Drop in a few screws and tighten it all down. And check out how tight fitment is in here, which I actually love. It's gonna keep the empty space in this build to a bare minimum. I might need to remove, let me see, I'm gonna remove RAM first. We'll reinsert that later to give us a bit more leeway here. I knew it would be tight. On paper, it's supposed to just barely work out with front fans installed, but that's gonna give us a nice compact look overall. Oh yeah, check that out. It just barely works. Wow, yeah, this really is something. It's coming together nicely. We need to get the block connected next, and then we'll play around with the screen a bit. I have an idea for something I want to 3D print to place in it.
Now, since the aim for the general PC hardware was minimalism, I did everything I could to keep these tubes from the AIO as little exposed as possible. Now, don't worry, nothing is too king-tiered where we're not gonna have solid fluid flow, but this curvy, flexible tubing just isn't gonna vibe well with the edgy digital vibes I'm after. So I tucked them in for this look here, and I'm pretty happy with it. I had to remove RAM to route cables from the block as well, so I popped those back in and admire the result thus far.
I bet this is gonna be super satisfying. Ooh. Ooh, that was nice. And I get 2 more, awesome. Wow, that is such a cool finish. So from your perspective, this is supposed to look super immersive. I believe Trikes also makes one where the screen actually wraps around the perimeter of the cube, but this one, I think, makes you feel like you're actually in the scene. If you can get the right sort of video playing in the background with what we're gonna 3D print in the center, it will all feel like it's a part of the movie. I need to make a few additional measurements before I print the remaining pieces for this, and so that means I need to get the card installed because I don't want clearance issues with stuff we have to spend time printing later. You can see that this is an extremely tight fit, but it does work. I did check beforehand, and that will sit like so. Wow, this thing takes up the entire depth of the case, which is pretty awesome. Of course, there also gives us a nice little GPU support bracket underneath to keep our card nice and flat, which is super cool in the 3200, especially at this price point. Now, the goal is to have one of these bikes here, the light bikes, running along the top of the card, and then we're gonna have one of its light bars streaming behind it with an LED shining up. So it's gonna look hopefully pretty cool. It'll look like it's, live, like it's happening in real time because of the active LEDs that are gonna be sort of permeating through the clear PLA that we're printing with. The underside of the card is also I hope, going to have one of these bikes. So like one's on top, one's on bottom, like they're dueling, and then this one's gonna have another light bar shining downward with that clear PLA. So we'll have hopefully like a dark orange, like a burnt orange color, and then a very light blue up top. Of course, this was just the idea. I'm not totally sure if it's gonna pan out that way, but I'm hoping that my printer and my very weak Tinkercad skills can pull this off. I suppose while we're waiting for the rest of the stuff to print, we can go ahead and install the last vital hardware piece, that being our RM1000X, brand new 80 plus gold, fully modular. We're not gonna be seeing much of it, but this stuff is important. Oh, would you look at that? This is actually the shift variant, which I've never built with before, so that means that all of our connectors are on the side of the power supply, so the long side versus, well, that's the rear. They'd normally be right here. So this is interesting. I'm not sure if I'm a fan of this. We'll go ahead and connect it and see what's what. I will say, these cables, connectors at least, are extremely small, way smaller than what I'm used to working with. Okay, and now it should just slide in from the back. I wonder how much clearance we're gonna have though, since things are oriented this way. Well, that's not bad. I think they'll have enough space to turn. Now I'm gonna spend an insane amount of time cable managing.
Like I said earlier, this is super important to me, even if it won't be seen. 30 minutes or so, and we'll have it all in tip-top shape. And no need for custom cable extensions, since literally none of these cables will be visible through the left side panel. The end result isn't exactly my cleanest work, but given all the adapters, hubs, and sheer wires we were working with, I'll call this acceptable. I spent a bit more time cleaning up some of the prints I knew I wanted to use, like this large Tron logo, and throw in some double-sided Gorilla adhesive before slapping it onto the case. I did eyeball it, but I think it's pretty dang centered, and already goes such a long way in setting up the theme we're after. I mean, it does say Tron after all. Next came the light trail prints I was working on earlier. I made about 4 different sets of these, and I was pretty unhappy with each until the very last. I split them in 2 for a cleaner print, these last ones without supports, and super glued the halves together for a uniform look, and I found that this worked out the best. My inexperience here was definitely showing. I probably burned an entire roll of PLA just trying to hone in various light bars, cycles, and other supporting props. But sometimes that's the name of the game. I learned a ton throughout this process and settled finally on a more basic light cycle shape that included a 2-tiered color scheme. I chose white instead of clear PLA this time, which I may regret later, but I wanted contrast since the bikes themselves were now much simpler. I also printed a large slab with the male and female ISO logos to cover up empty space near the top right of the motherboard, an area generally untouched in most PC builds, and I thought it worked out pretty well, all things considered. The identity disc was last, and I plan to have it sit right here.
I did something for this build that I haven't done in a very long time, and that's purchase LED strips. It seems like we've moved on from these to, you know, like LED fans. We have LEDs and graphics cards, AIOs, like streamers and things. So these you don't see too often anymore. But again, because the lighting scheme in this build is so important to me to fit that Tron Legacy vibe we're after, I wanted to make sure that I had several of these to play with. So I have 4 here. They're all gonna be sort of like categorized and grouped according to what they're going to light. So we have our first fully completed Tron light bike, or light cycle I should say, and this one is going to be the light blue, sort of like classic good guy color. That's going to sit on top. I'm currently printing a bracket that's going to bolt to the rear PCIe slot area. That's going to keep this elevated above the graphics card. This is going to get very hot. It's a 4090 after all. And so the last thing I want happening is this PLA melting. Now I could solve this sort of by switching to a different type of filament, but I only have PLA here, so for now we're just gonna rock with this. I can always reprint these. I've saved all of these STL files in a different kind of filament later. So we're gonna have one up top, it's gonna be lit light blue, and then we're gonna have the second, which looks identical, at least without being lit. That's going to be upside down, much like in the light cycle battle that you see in Tron Legacy, where they can sort of like flip underneath the track, you know, the way that the terrain sort of like flips upside down. I thought that was really cool when I first saw that in the movie, and so I want to try to pay homage to it here by throwing a bike upside down on the underside of the graphics card. So almost like they're dueling. I'll just let them rest on top, like so. You can see you get this really cool effect where it looks like the bikes are sort of like battling each other out. And this bottom one's going to be lit that burnt orange, that very vibrant orange bad guy color. And so one of the LED strips is going to be tied to one header on the motherboard set to that light blue. We're also, I think, going to illuminate the ISO symbols in that light blue. And then the bad guy, possibly even the Tron logo below, those are going to be lit in orange. So there should be a pretty stark difference in terms of like who's good, who's bad, what we're trying to point out there. And then I think for general ambiance, like the overall mood, sort of just like illuminating the rest of the build, I'm going to stick to a very subtle, probably dimly lit white, sort of like a neutral color for a majority of the fans, just to, yeah, not overdo it. Again, there's going to be sort of like clashing colors here. That's intentional, but I don't want to go overboard with it by like mixing up, you know, fan colors and things as well. Some might prefer that. It's not really what I'm after here. All right, and here is the look. Now, I'm not sure if it's going to stay like this, but this is the, well, this is as far as I was hoping I would get. I'm surprised I managed to pull it off, actually. I was assuming we'd run into maybe more issues with a 3D printer. I made several, again, switches for the light bikes because these were just so complicated. Some of the ones that I wanted to use were just much larger models, and when I'd scale them down, stuff just wasn't translating. So overall, I am very happy with this look. We haven't turned any of the lights on yet, so we don't really know how that's all going to play yet. The one thing I'm not totally happy about is the disc up top. I'm not sure if it's the color or if it's the size. Maybe it needs to be a bit higher. I'm going to play around with that a bit. I might just scrap it all together. I really like the ISO, the male and female ISO logos in the background. That fills up some of that empty space up top. But then the light bikes racing each other. I mean, that I think is going to be the kicker when it's all said and done. So without further ado, let's try to power this thing on. The keen among you may have noticed I'm also running two different types of RGB strips. So the one for the top bike as well as the Tron logo, those are actually not addressable. The only addressable one is here. It's not going to matter because we're just sticking with static colors, so we're not going to be running any super cool effects like per LED lighting or anything, but that's just because I planned this kind of poorly and I didn't realize that I wasn't going to be able to just splice all three of them together and run off on a single header, of course, if they are just dummy LEDs. All right, here we go. This is the first time we've powered this rig up. I'm hoping we don't have any issues. Where's the power button? There it is. Oh, that looks so cool. I love the way the clear PLA is playing with these LED strips. Wow, that is insane. Obviously, we have to do a ton of color calibrating, but I mean, this is already a fantastic start. And one of the things I'm hoping to work out in software is you can see that the clear PLA, while it's doing its job, it's not really diffusing individual LEDs as much as I would like. And in order to do this properly, I'd have to really thicken up the sidewalls. And for the sake of time, I didn't do that here. It's also a bit shaky. See, if I move the case back and forth just a tad, these bikes like to swing. And that's, again, just a byproduct of using a very long sort of like mount for the PCIe slot cover areas. I really didn't want to put this PLA on top of the graphics card for obvious reasons. So we'll see long term how it holds up. For now though, let's go ahead and get some software downloaded and see what we can do with these lights. These fans are also insanely quiet at idle, by the way, and I haven't tweaked anything yet. I know I was giving Corsair crap for being, you know, expensive. A lot of their fans are, at least. But these are probably some of the best fans I've ever worked with, I gotta say. So in Corsair iCUE, I'm gonna drop the brightness of these fans with a neutral white down to about here. That should really set the mood. I also decided to do this cool little lighting effect where it looks like light bikes are battling each other. So we've got the light blue, the good guy, and of course the orange for the bad guy right next to him, sort of trailing him, which will sort of mimic, I guess, where the bikes previously were before they come up above and below the graphics card. I'm not sure if I'll stick with this. It is a bit busy, I'll admit, but it does sort of fit the two-team theme. While we're waiting for Armory Crate to install, this is what things look like through the front panel with the fans set to that very dim neutral white. I think that the smoke front cover in this 3200D really did us a favor. Helps diffuse the light a little bit, again, sort of sets the mood. Oh, check it out. I found this super cool looping GIF of a Tron light. I think this is actually Sam Flynn, like, riding the old bike from his dad into the city, and I think it looks so cool. It loops really well, and I believe we can pull this into our trike's cooler. It's already in the software. Let's see what it looks like. You know what? I don't even want this thing in here anymore. That does look pretty dang cool. Now, it's pixelated. I mean, it's a GIF after all, or GIF, whatever you guys call it. But I want to try a few other options. I think this could be better. We've got the instant classic, Sam jumping onto the light cycle for the first time. That is a super cool shot. I love the animations in this one. Again, a bit pixelated. It's not the smoothest frame rate either, but it's a worthy contender, I think. And then there's this one. Now, I actually really like this one, and I'm surprised when I see it on this display, the fact that we have the mirrored reflection, this is doing it for me. And the change in like the focal depth, like it focuses on Sam's character way in the background from the disc. I think that's such a cool pull. And yeah, just kind of gives credence to the whole like battle that he's going to be having with a lot of these characters. Ugh, finally, something I can work with. All right, so let me show you how cool this is. So I switched over to Signal RGB for literally everything, and I should have done this from the start. So let's say I want to change one of those Corsair Dom Platts colors, right? I've got one set to a light blue, one set to an orange, but let's say I want to change the color again. So I'm going to right click on one of these, and I'm going to click go to settings, and then I'll click paint. And I just like static colors, so let's go with, I don't know, like a white. And all I gotta do is paint over individual LEDs. Look at that. As I select each LED, you can see it changes in real time, going up to the top of the dim. Now that is good customer service. That's what I like to see in an RGB software shade. This was intended to be an RGB software review video, but I've got to say, I've never been more frustrated with software suites than I have right now, because we have so many different things going on, and the lighting scheme is so important here. So we've gotten most of the coloring together. I wanted to keep the card orange. I think that's kind of going to balance out the colors, you know, in terms of how much blue there is versus how much orange, because we have a lot of like the blue and white up top. Now the fans are not the right color yet. I'm gonna go ahead and change those. Let's see how easy that is. I think it's Corsair Link Device. I'm pretty sure. So we're gonna go to settings, and then, oh, okay, yeah. So we'll turn saturation down. That should... Did that do anything? I don't know if that did anything. Oh, there we go. Forced. Okay, that's much better. And then we can drop the brightness. Oh yeah, do we get that somber mood? I tell you what, it is so nice being able to just control things in real time. That is so convenient. And then I want to see if I can change the color of the text over the rear I/O of the board. I think I'm just going to disable it. Oh yeah, that's so much better. If we just keep it on the mirror finish, because we do have that same mirror finish with our Trix AIO. I think this is the look, folks. I am super happy with this. Somehow, we've managed to mostly pull this off, and this has taken place over several days. You probably see me change shirts throughout multiple scenes here in this video, and that's because some of these 3D prints took a long time, and then also having to quickly make changes and swap things out when prints weren't working out. It's all just part of the game. You know, I haven't made anything like this before, so I'm pulling from the library online, of course, through the Bamboo Studio software, and then I'm also having to create my own sort of brackets and things as well to make it all fit with this particular set of components. And I think it's turned out pretty well. I think for my first time doing like a sort of like themed PC build, which I definitely want to do more of in the future, this is a pretty good start. I've learned a lot, and I'm becoming more and more familiar with how to use my P2S, my 3D printer as well. So I imagine my prints in general will improve with time, as will the themed PC builds as a result. I want to thank you guys for watching this one, for just clicking on the video. It's a huge help. This is not a perfect, like, end-all, be-all, best Tron-themed PC build out there. I'm sure there are others on YouTube. I haven't looked, but this was my first go. Some things I would change. I definitely wish that I had somehow incorporated the LEDs into the light cycles themselves. I think the white accents are okay, but you can see, especially in these darker shots, the cycles themselves just kind of disappear. And this was really intended to be a rig that really popped right at night in the dark. And so I do wish I had more time that I could integrate the LEDs in some unique way, maybe swap the white for that transparent PLA, and then work some longer LED strips further through the line. But other than that, there isn't much more I could really do. I mean, we could always just throw more and more stuff at this, but I don't want to make it too busy. I like that this build still looks pretty clean for the most part. Again, all the cables are completely hidden thanks to the BTF stuff from ASUS. We've got the color syncing with the Dom Plats. I think that looks really cool. It's sort of an extension of the light cycle dueling and the Corsair fans as well, just sort of setting the mood overall. I think, again, for my first attempt at this, it turned out all right. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Again, thanks so much for clicking on this video. Thank you for the support, and let me know what themed PC build you'd like to see next. I'm down for anything. Anime, movies, your favorite video games, things like that. Whatever comment I see liked the most under this video, I will theme a PC around that next. Hold me to it. Again, thanks for the support, and thanks for building with me.